My boss fired me in front of the entire office. He called me useless. Then he took credit for my work. What he didn't know was that the client was already calling me. This didn't happen in a courtroom. It didn't happen behind closed doors. It happened in a glass-walled conference room. On a Monday morning. With every desk in the office facing it. My name is Ethan Cole. And until that day, I believed loyalty still meant something at work. I had been with the company for 3 years. Not long enough to feel safe. Not short enough to feel disposable. I was the one who stayed late when deadlines slipped. The one who fixed problems quietly so no one else had to look bad. The one who believed that effort eventually would be noticed. That morning, my manager asked me to join an urgent meeting. No explanation. No context. Just a calendar invite marked mandatory. When I walked into the room, HR was already seated. My boss didn't look up from his laptop. That's when I knew this wasn't about performance. This was about control. He didn't ask me to sit. He stood, cleared his throat, and spoke loudly enough for the entire floor to hear. He said I had failed the team. That my work had caused delays. That my attitude was becoming a problem. I tried to speak. He raised his hand. And then he said the word that changed everything. Terminated. No warning. No private conversation. No dignity. I could feel eyes on me through the glass walls. Co-workers pretending to type. People who had once thanked me for saving their projects. Now staring at their screens. No one said a word. Then came the part that hurt more than being fired. My boss turned to the screen behind him. And began presenting my work. A project I had led for months. A strategy one had built line by line. He spoke as if it were his own. He praised the results. Took credit for the client interest. Smiled while explaining how he had turned things around. HR slid a folder across the table. I didn't open it. Because in that moment, I finally understood something most people learn too late. This wasn't about mistakes. This was about replacement. And as I stood there, humiliated and silent, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't check it yet. But if I had, I would have seen the name of the client my boss was bragging about. And everything he thought he had taken from me was already slipping out of his hands. I walked out of that office thinking I had lost everything. What I didn't realize yet was that the next call would decide who actually belonged there. I didn't go home after the meeting. Not because I was angry. Not because I didn't know where to go. But because for the first time in years, I didn't need permission to stay. My badge still worked when I swiped into my office. The small one near the emergency exit. No window. No nameplate. I sat down and looked around. Stacks of notebooks. Whiteboards filled with diagrams no one else understood. Sticky notes layered over old ones, evolving ideas, quiet fixes. This was where the company actually lived. Not the glass boardroom. Not Martin's speeches. Here. When I first joined the company, it was barely surviving. A promising idea drowning in bad execution. Martin was charismatic. He knew how to sell vision. But he didn't understand systems. That part fell to me. I redesigned the logistics flow. Built redundancy where there was none. Negotiated directly with vendors when things broke at 2 a.m. Most importantly, I became the point of contact for Orion Group. The client. The one account that changed everything. They didn't trust Martin. They trusted results. So they called me. Not officially. Not loudly. Quiet emails. Private calls. Late-night troubleshooting sessions when deadlines were on fire. Martin liked to say, "Clients love us." What he meant was, clients loved not losing money. And I made sure they didn't. Over time, Orion stopped looping Martin in altogether. It wasn't defiance. It was efficiency. I handled contracts. I handled updates. I handled emergencies. At some point, without announcing it, the relationship shifted. They weren't working with the company. They were working with me. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder labeled contingencies. Inside were documents I'd prepared months ago. Not out of paranoia. Out of pattern recognition. I'd seen this before. Good workers get quiet. Then invisible. Then disposable. So when Orion insisted on a continuity clause, one guaranteeing system oversight by the original architect, I made sure my name was on it. Personally. Legally. Martin skimmed it at the time. He trusted me. That trust was his mistake. My phone buzzed. An email. From Orion Legal. Subject, tomorrow's presentation. Ethan, we're looking forward to your walkthrough tomorrow. Just confirming you'll still be leading the session. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back. Yes. As planned. I shut the laptop and leaned back. Tomorrow was supposed to be Martin's victory lap. New funding. Press coverage. Expansion announcements. He'd rehearsed it for weeks. What he hadn't rehearsed was explaining why the one person the client expected to see had been publicly dismissed the day before. I packed my bag slowly. No rush. Because when power is real, it doesn't need to announce itself. I didn't know how this would end. But I knew one thing. I wasn't done being part of that story. By the time Martin realized the client wasn't asking for the company anymore, they were asking for me. It was already too late to undo what he'd set in motion. That night, I checked my phone. There was one message I hadn't opened yet. The next morning, I didn't wear a suit. That felt important. Martin liked uniforms, tailored jackets, confidence on display. I chose something simpler. Clean. Neutral. Unremarkable. The kind of presence that doesn't demand attention, but holds it once noticed. I arrived at the building early. Security nodded as I walked in. No alerts. No interruptions. My access hadn't been cut yet. That made sense. IT never moved fast when it mattered. Upstairs, the office buzzed with anticipation. Assistants moved quickly. Marketing adjusted banners. Someone mentioned press seating near the windows. Today was the day. The Orion presentation. I didn't head to the boardroom. Instead, I took a seat in a smaller conference room down the hall. One with a direct line patched into the main system. A quiet room. Like the one I'd worked from for years. At 9:02 a.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. Ethan, a voice said. Calm. Professional. This was Victor Lane, Orion's director of operations. We're ready on our end, he said. Just wanted to confirm a few technical points before we begin. Of course, I replied. I'm available. There was a pause. Are you in the building? He asked carefully. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. Good, he said. Because Martin is asking if you'll be joining us. I pictured it instantly. Martin at the head of the table. Slides cued. Smile practiced. looking around. Not seeing me. He didn't mention that, I said evenly. But I'm prepared to proceed. Victor exhaled softly. Relief, not confusion. That's what we hoped, he said. Honestly, Ethan, we weren't comfortable moving forward without you. In the background, I heard muffled voices. Tension creeping in. I'll patch in, I said. As the line connected, the room changed. I could hear Martin now. Laughing. Confident. As you'll see in the next phase, he was saying. Then Victor interrupted. Before we continue, he said. We were expecting Ethan Cole to lead this section. Silence. Not polite silence. Alarmed silence. I imagined Martin's face. The flicker of irritation. The quick mental math. He's no longer with the company, Martin said smoothly. But I can address any. Victor cut him off. I don't think you understand, he said. Our agreement specifies Ethan's oversight. Another voice joined in. Legal. We need clarification, she said. Immediately. The room across the hall shifted. I could feel it. The way balance changes when weight moves suddenly. Someone knocked on my door. Soft. Urgent. Ethan, a voice whispered. It's HR. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch. Because for years, silence had worked against me. Now, it was finally working for me. While HR scrambled and Martin tried to regain control, Orion's legal team began asking a question. No one in the room was ready to answer. Who actually owns the future of this company? They still thought I was gone. That was their mistake. HR came in alone. No clipboard. No rehearsed speech. Just Marissa, eyes tired, voice careful. Ethan, she said, closing the door behind her. We need to talk. I gestured to the chair across from me. She didn't sit. There's confusion, she began. About your status. I nodded. That happens, I said. She swallowed. You were terminated yesterday. Correct. And yet, she continued, lowering her voice. Orion is refusing to proceed without you. Through the wall, I could hear raised voices now. Martin's confidence fraying at the edges. They're asking for legal clarification, Marissa said. They're pulling documents. I leaned back. I assumed they would, I said. Her eyes flicked to the speakerphone on the table. The line was still open. Muted. Orion was listening. Ethan, she said, softer now. Did you sign anything, independently? I reached into my bag and pulled out a thin folder. No labels. No drama. Just paper. I slid it across the table. She opened it. Her face changed. Not shock. Recognition. This was the look people get when they realize they missed something important. Because they were too busy assuming control. The continuity clause, she whispered. I nodded. It's standard in high-risk operational contracts, I said. Orion insisted. Her fingers tightened on the pages. This gives you authority over system operations, she said slowly. Personal authority. Yes. And termination doesn't revoke it, she added. No, I said. It activates it. From the speakerphone, Victor's voice broke through. Marissa, he asked. We need confirmation. She pressed the mute button off with a shaky hand. Yes, she said. The clause is valid. There was a pause. Then Victor spoke again. In that case, he said. We'll need to renegotiate the company's involvement. I could hear Martin now. Sharp. Defensive. You can't be serious, he said. This is an internal matter. Victor didn't raise his voice. It was, he said. Until yesterday. Another voice joined in, Orion Legal. Effective immediately, she said. We're suspending expansion until oversight is clarified. Suspending expansion. That was the phrase. The one that froze rooms. Delayed funding. Triggered board calls. I watched Marissa carefully. She looked at me now. Not as an employee. But as a variable. Ethan, she said quietly. What do you want? I considered the question. Not emotionally. Not vindicatively. Practically. I want the work protected, I said. The systems. The people who keep them running. And your role, she asked. I want it defined, I replied. Not erased. Another knock at the door. Harder this time. Martin's voice followed. Ethan, he said tightly. We need to talk. Now. I stood. Straightened my sleeves. And for the first time since the meeting yesterday, I smiled. Martin thought this conversation would end with an apology. He didn't realize it would end with a choice. That could cost him everything he'd built his name on. The change didn't arrive with an announcement. There was no confrontation. No dramatic meeting. It showed up quietly. Meetings that were supposed to happen didn't. Calendar invites were sent, then quietly withdrawn. Emails that once received instant replies sat unread for hours. Then days. People started waiting. Not for instructions, but for permission. Martin still walked the floor like he always had. Same posture. Same confident stride. But something was missing. When questions came up, he deferred them. When decisions were needed, he asked for time. Time he didn't seem to have anymore. I wasn't in the building when this started. I heard about it later. In fragments. A developer mentioning a delay that made no sense. A project manager whispering about a call that had been cancelled twice. An assistant quietly asking who was actually authorized to approve changes now. No one said my name. They didn't have to. Because Orion had stopped asking for updates. They were asking for explanations. And explanations require authority. Authority Martin no longer had. The company tried to keep things moving. Interim solutions. Temporary approvals. Workarounds that felt more like stalling tactics. But large systems don't respond well to hesitation. They slow down. They expose weak points. And Martin had become one of them. By midweek, his office door stayed closed longer than usual. Not because he was busy. Because people had stopped knocking. In meetings, his voice wasn't louder than the room anymore. It was measured. Careful. He listened more than he spoke. That alone told me everything. Because power doesn't disappear all at once. It drains. Silently. Relentlessly. By the time the board requested clarity on Orion's position, things were already moving without him. Decisions were being made elsewhere. Conversations were happening he wasn't part of. And for the first time since I'd known him, Martin wasn't directing outcomes. He was waiting for them. I didn't know what the final decision would be. But I knew this much. When the room goes quiet around someone like Martin, it's usually because the answer has already been decided. I didn't hear about Martin's exit the day it happened. There was no announcement. No farewell email. No speech about new directions. His name simply stopped appearing on calendars. His office light stayed off. And when people spoke about leadership, they spoke in the present tense, without him in it. Orion finalized their decision quietly. They didn't escalate. They didn't threaten. They adjusted. Contracts were amended. Oversight responsibilities were clarified. The role of original architect was no longer optional. It was essential. I was asked to join the final call remotely. No pressure. No celebration. Just confirmation. Martin wasn't on the line. Someone else handled the introductions. They thanked me for my work. For my preparation. For my patience. They said they were relieved to finally be speaking to the person who actually understood the system. When the call ended, I closed my laptop and sat there for a moment. Not because I felt victorious, but because I felt finished. There was nothing left to prove. Nothing left to explain. The story had reached its natural conclusion. I didn't return to the office. There was no reason to. My role didn't require a desk anymore. It required clarity. Weeks later, I ran into Marissa. She didn't mention Martin. She just said, "You handled that better than most people would have." I nodded. Because I knew the truth. I hadn't handled anything. I had simply stopped fighting a system that was already correcting itself. That's the thing about betrayal. It feels personal when it happens. But consequences rarely are. They move through contracts. Through silence. Through decisions made without emotion. Martin didn't lose everything in one moment. He lost it. The same way he took it from others. Quietly. Incrementally. And without witnesses. As for me, I didn't win anything. I just kept what was mine. Long enough for the truth to catch up. Some betrayals explode. Others fade. When the truth finally reaches the right hands. If stories like this remind you that quiet karma still exists, you'll find more of them here. Subscribe to Echoes of Karma. Because not every ending needs revenge. Some just need patience.